Welcome to my channel. Today, we are talking about the story of the film Miller's Girl. This is the story of a teacher who could not keep himself away from a young, beautiful student. So without wasting time, let's begin the explanation. The story begins with a girl named Cairo, whose parents lived in another country. Cairo lives alone in a deserted house where writing became her passion. Passing through the jungle, Cairo reaches a class where she meets Jonathan. Jonathan is a middle-aged man who could not become a successful writer, so he became a teacher. When Cairo joins Jonathan's class, he asks her to read some books from the syllabus, but she has already read them all. Then another girl named Winnie arrives, who is not only a student in this class but also a close friend of Cairo. They both go out to eat something. Jonathan finds an adult book in Cairo's belongings. His friend Boris arrives to buy coffee, and upon seeing the book, he picks it up and starts reading. Both Boris and Jonathan are shocked to see it as a copy of a book written by Jonathan. Jonathan's wife, Beatrice, is busy at night. To get her attention, Jonathan tells her, "A student was reading my book in class today." Then Beatrice receives a phone call from a friend. After the call, she and Jonathan drink together. As they get closer, Beatrice receives another call, and Jonathan becomes frustrated. The next day, he tells Boris about it, and Boris laughs at him. Then they both see Cairo coming from the jungle. Still frustrated from the previous night, Jonathan watches her closely and asks, "Aren't you scared to walk through the jungle?" Cairo confidently replies, "I am the scariest thing in that jungle." Jonathan starts laughing upon hearing this. At school, Winnie drops her books. Boris realizes she did it on purpose and asks, "Tell me, what do you want?" Winnie deliberately teases Boris, and Cairo, noticing this, tells her, "You're totally crazy." Later, Cairo and Winnie go to Cairo's house. Cairo is upset about a question in her college application, which asks her to describe her greatest achievement. They discuss many things, but none seem unique. Then Winnie suggests, "Why not write about your affair with your teacher?" Cairo immediately protests, "But Jonathan is 20 years older than me." Winnie keeps convincing her, saying, "That's normal nowadays. Plus, Jonathan is a gentleman, perfect for your first time." Winnie starts talking about Jonathan in front of Cairo, mentioning how he looks at her in class. Cairo feels shy hearing this, and from the next day, her interest in Jonathan increases. She starts staring at him in class. Jonathan approaches her and tells her, "Meet me after class." After class, Jonathan invites Boris to dinner. Boris leaves while playfully dancing. Amused, Jonathan tries to imitate his dance steps, and just then, Cairo walks in. They both laugh and move past the moment. Jonathan is deeply impressed by a passage written by Cairo, memorizing it word for word. Cairo realizes this and is happy. Jonathan gives her a special assignment, to write a short story in the style of her favorite author. If she does well, he will give her full marks in the midterm. Cairo eagerly agrees. She tells Jonathan, "I have also read your book." She even remembers many lines from his book, just as Jonathan remembered her writing. Jonathan is impressed and invites Cairo to meet him over the weekend to discuss her assignment. That night, Jonathan and Beatrice go to dinner. When the waiter arrives to take their order, Beatrice asks Jonathan, "Is she the same girl you've been talking about?" Jonathan replies, "No, she's Cairo." But it is clear that Beatrice is jealous of Jonathan's interest in Cairo. To vent her anger, she insults Jonathan in front of Boris, saying, "You don't have what it takes to be a writer anymore." She is Cairo, but it was clear that Beatrice was jealous of Jonathan's interest in Cairo. She started insulting Jonathan in front of Boris to vent her anger, saying, "You don't have that writer's talent anymore. You haven't written anything in years, you're just an ordinary teacher." On the weekend, Cairo went to the place Jonathan had mentioned, and Jonathan followed her, sitting beside her. A man began reciting a poem. Jonathan listened carefully, while Cairo kept her eyes on Jonathan. After the poem, Cairo stepped outside and lit a cigarette. Jonathan joined her. The next day, Cairo appeared before Jonathan in a revealing dress. When Boris asked about it, Cairo said nothing. After Boris left, Cairo started talking to Jonathan. They grew closer while walking to class. Jonathan received a message from his wife about going out. During class, Cairo told Jonathan about her favorite author and the style she would use for her story. Jonathan, in a hurry to leave, agreed without much thought. After he left, Winnie climbed onto Jonathan's desk and started teasing Cairo. Later, Boris came to meet Jonathan. Winnie continued teasing Boris and slipped his phone into her clothes, while Cairo couldn't find her own phone. Meanwhile, Jonathan's plan with his wife got cancelled because she was busy with work. Then, Jonathan got a call from Cairo. He had accidentally taken her phone in his bag. Since his plans with his wife were already cancelled, he decided to return the phone to Cairo. When he reached Cairo's house, it started raining. Cairo stepped out in a thin dress. They looked at each other, then kissed. Afterward, Jonathan returned home. Cairo sent him an email. Jonathan's wife told him, "I can't focus on my work while you're here." So Jonathan went to a small cabin. There, he printed out the story Cairo had sent him and began reading. It was an adult story, describing a relationship between a teacher and a student, just like Jonathan and Cairo. Jonathan felt aroused and took off his pants, but everything changed the next day. Jonathan no longer called Cairo as he used to. Cairo asked what had happened, but Jonathan said he didn't like her story, claiming it had too many mistakes. When Cairo insisted that the story was about them, Jonathan firmly denied it, saying, "There is nothing between us. I am just your teacher, nothing more." Hearing this, Cairo was heartbroken. Jonathan warned her, "Rewrite it, or I will fail you in the midterm." Cairo grew even angrier. "My story is perfect," she shouted. "You're just afraid because I wrote what you couldn't." To humiliate Jonathan, Cairo called him a mediocre writer. "If you have the guts, fail me now," she challenged. Cairo went home crying and started drinking with Winnie. Meanwhile, Jonathan looked visibly tense. His wife asked him what was wrong. Jonathan told her about Cairo's story. Hearing it, she got excited, but just as they were about to get intimate, Boris arrived, frustrating Jonathan again. On the other side, Cairo and Winnie were talking. Cairo told Winnie that Jonathan had only been pretending to care about her. Cairo then asked Winnie to distract Boris by messaging him. Winnie teased Boris, but her words had no effect. To grab Boris's attention, Cairo made a bold decision. She and Winnie took off their clothes, got close, and sent pictures to Boris. As soon as Boris saw them, he immediately left Jonathan's house. At that moment, Jonathan's wife got a call from the school. The whole school had already learned about Jonathan and Cairo's affair. His wife was shocked. She confronted Jonathan, "Why is this happening? Just because of a student's story?" She asked Jonathan directly, "Did something else happen between you and that girl?" Jonathan denied it. The next day, Cairo didn't come to class. She was in the vice principal's office. The vice principal called both Cairo and Jonathan in and asked, "What is going on?" Cairo revealed everything. "Jonathan gave me the midterm assignment in advance. We smoked together. We also met outside school." When it was Jonathan's turn to speak, he hesitated. Seeing his hesitation, the vice principal understood everything and suspended Jonathan from his job. Outside the office, Boris told Jonathan, "You should have known your limits. Now, because you crossed them, this is where you end up." Then he walked away. After returning home, Jonathan told his wife that he was fired. His wife started doubting him again. "Did something really happen between you two?" she asked. Jonathan denied it once more. But this time, Beatrice didn't believe him. "Do you have feelings for her?" she asked. Jonathan said nothing. They started arguing, blaming each other for everything. The fight escalated, and Beatrice finally decided to divorce Jonathan. Meanwhile, Winnie met Cairo and said, "What you did got Jonathan fired." But Cairo didn't care anymore. She smirked and said, "Jonathan underestimated me. Now, he will know who I really am." Cairo saw the entire situation as her greatest achievement. Finally, she said, "Jonathan has no job now, no wife. Will he even be able to write anymore?" The movie ends. That's all for today's recap. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.